There is the collective imagination of humanity, the collective imagination of your ancestors, the collective imagination of your culture, of your religion. And that is what myth is. Myth, the word myth comes from the word mother, mater, matrix, matter, time, measurement, music. All of this comes from the highest level of imagination that we are capable of. And so we kind of, in our depths of our soul, we link with that collective longing and the collective imagination of our ancestors, and from there we project future mythologies. And these inspire us to do what we would otherwise think is the impossible.
Brings us on to superheroes, I guess. I'm getting more fascinated by the fact that our culture has become obsessed with the notion of the superhero. And we kind of knew it was happening. All of us are interested in comic books, and I've been reading this stuff for a long time. Could see it happening over this last decade. And the superhero is kind of, I feel as if it's rising in the consciousness, particularly of the West, as a desperate attempt to find a way out of a situation we're in right now. When I was writing All-Star Superman, which was my kind of way to get into the very basis of what the idea of the superhero was all about, in issue 10 we have a sequence where basically we see the entire history of humankind's attempts to visualise superhuman beings or higher potentials. And so it opens with Aboriginals in Australia pointing at the stars while we're drawing Wandjina paintings on the rocks, trying to envisage what would people from the stars, what are these higher people, what are they, what is the potential that we have. It moves on to a sculptor doing a sculpture of Krishna in India. Then we move on to what for me was the key for the whole thing. It's like back at the start of the Renaissance, the Italian Renaissance, Pico della Mirandola was a philosopher who basically laid out the stall for the Renaissance, and what his whole message, and you should read it one day because it's actually quite interesting. It's where our culture started in a lot of ways. And Pico suggested that humans were different from other animals and other living things because they were able to copy. They had a mimetic ability. Other animals were driven by instincts and programs that they couldn't really escape, but what humans are capable of doing is actually reprogram themselves to be anything. And Pico's suggestion was that, obviously he was a philosopher, so he said philosophy is the best thing you can be, because he was a philosopher and he thought that was the best possible thing you could possibly be. But what was interesting is he said, we need to live up to our stories. We need philosophy which gives an idea of a higher potential, because then we have something to live up to. And I get really interested in this idea of stories and the kind of stories that we tell ourselves and the effects that they have on us. And recently our culture for a long time has been telling us of a really dark and bleak story, and it's the story of our own end and our own guilt and our own disastrous mistakes. And that story is now pushing us to the brink of disaster because we keep telling it. We keep telling ourselves we're wrong, we've done bad things, we deserve to be hurt. Our kids are harming themselves, our soldiers are bleeding on battlefields. It's not a good story. And what we should be doing is thinking back to what Pico said, a long time ago, a really smart man, one of us, who realised that we need to give ourselves myths to live up to. We need Superman to look up to, because then we've got potential. Once we have Superman, we know where we should go. Superman's the way out. The superhero always wins, he always saves us, he always finds an answer to even the most intractable problems. And that concept as an imaginative construct that we have invented is actually maybe one of our best ways out of Western culture's deathlock right now. And I think it's interesting that all these superhero movies are coming. This figure of the exalted human, the one who's slightly beyond where we are but still has ties to what we are, is trying to get us out, it's trying to solve the problem. Let's beat the villain, let's build the starship, let's go, And so I think this whole thing for me is about the stories that we tell each other, and the stories that I try to tell you guys through the comics, and the stories that you tell me. It's really important we start telling new stories, we stop being guilty and we deal with all these things about the past, and we deal with our dark side and move on, because otherwise our culture's about to commit suicide.